In this lecture, we're going to be talking about the history of evolution, because before we can talk about evolutionary theory, we need to talk about the basis, where it came from, what ideas were going on at the time. So the skills to master for the exam will be number 1, define evolution. Number 2, describe pre-evolutionary hypotheses from the Greeks, Cuvier, and Hutton and Lyle. Also, you should be able to describe Lamarck's hypothesis of how organisms change over time. So the picture here is of a dead leaf moth. So you might have looked at this immediately and thought, oh, this is just garbage. Why is Dr. Poe showing us garbage? But if you look, you can see the antenna and the legs. This is an actual organism. And if you were a bird looking for an organism to eat, a moth to eat, and you're just glancing at the ground, perhaps you wouldn't see this moth either. So these types of observations are what really led biologists to question how we got here. How is life so diverse? So here's the 3 observations that I want you to think about. So organisms are strikingly well suited for the life in their environments, like this dead leaf moth. That's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm sure that you can think of organisms that they can do exactly what they need to do in order to survive in their environment. Additionally, organisms share many characteristics of life, so this is what we consider the unity of life. And an example of that is that there are homologous bones, homologous meaning same place, same function, in a bat wing and in a human hand. Well, hand and arm. It's absolutely amazing that we've got these same similar structures but have 2 different functions. So in the bat wing, that's used for flight, whereas our hand is very dexterous. We can use this to manipulate the world around us. But in terms of structure, it's the same bones. So that's one of the shared characteristics of life. And you can think of others, like mammals all have hair, we all have lungs, we all breathe, we all have hearts to pump blood through our bodies. That's this unity of life. But also we have a rich diversity. So even looking among just humans, looking to your right and looking to your left, you don't see any 2 humans that are exactly perfectly alike, not even identical twins. There are small characteristics that are different between them, and that's our rich diversity of life. So these 3 observations you can make for yourself, and early biologists have been making for thousands of years. And these 3 observations, like how did this diversity occur? Why is there unity? Why are organisms strikingly well suited for life? That's why we're talking about the history of evolutionary thought. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about what the Greeks observed. So the Greeks observed animals, and what they observed is that different animals have different characteristics. And so they were able to group animals into distinct categories based on these characteristics. Characteristics like height, hoofs, skin, fur, that sort of thing. And so this was kind of the first way that we were able to organize animals into distinct clusters. So this is how we have horses compared to cows. Like they have different characteristics, even though they both have 4 legs. They walk on 4 legs, and structurally they're very similar, but there are also dissimilarities. And so the Greeks were the first to do that. And through all these observations, they concluded that the animals must have been made for the environment, because they're just so suited. Their characteristics just match so perfectly. Environment. Okay, so that they concluded that this must have been made. And so I like to point out that this is, in the BCE time, so this is before Jesus Christ, before we had a written Bible, that sort of thing. Well, a written Bible including the New Testament. But this closely matched up with the Old Testament, saying that God created all of the animals and man to do these certain things. So that's what the Greeks kind of lined their beliefs with. Okay. And then we've got people like Carlos Linnaeus, who made a more distinctive binomial nomenclature system to actually physically name species and make these divisions more finite. But we're not going to worry about that. That's just FYI. The next important one that we're talking about in terms of evolutionary thought is Cuvier. Okay, so Cuvier, he looked at fossils. That's what he cared about. He cared about fossils. And so what he noticed is that, you know that the fossils near the top are the newest, and the fossils towards the bottom, as you dig deeper, they're older. So the deeper fossils, the deeper you go, the fossils are more dissimilar to what we see in today's animals. So they're more dissimilar than today's animals. So a cat wouldn't exactly look like a cat the deeper you go down. Okay. He also noticed that there's distinct stratifications. So that means like there's distinct lines and levels in these fossils as he's digging down. So distinct stratifications. Stratification. Oh goodness, me trying to spell, right? Oh, you poor students, sorry. So, we've got these fossils. The deeper we go, the more dissimilar they are, and we see these distinct stratifications. And this is in about the 1700s, and he concluded that there were catastrophic events. Cuvier catastrophe. Catastrophic events that wiped out entire populations, and then the nearby populations of animals that weren't affected by these catastrophic events would then come and repopulate. And so that would explain why the deeper you go, it's more dissimilar, and then that explains the layers. That's what he thought. So it's because of these catastrophic events that destroy populations. And so this aligns with the Noah's Ark story in the Bible. Destroys populations. Okay. And then we need to talk about two more fossil guys. Paleontologists is the actual word. Hutton and Lyle. And I group them together because they say such similar things. And these two had a huge, huge influence on Charles Darwin. And we'll talk more about that in the next section. Okay, so Hutton and Lyle, these two guys also looked at fossils. But they determined that the changes weren't based on catastrophes. The changes to Earth are slow processes. And this really resonated with Darwin, because if the Earth is changing slowly, then these animals can be changing slowly over time. And additionally, because this has happened, they look at the fossil record and they've determined that these changes are slow. Therefore, their conclusion is that the same processes occur today. The same slow processes occur today. Okay, and an example of that would be the Grand Canyon. So the Grand Canyon is beautiful and deep, and it's based around the Colorado River. That river formed that canyon over millions of years. So they kind of rejected the idea that the Earth was very, very young, just a few thousand years old. They proposed that because these processes are so slow, the Earth must be very, very old. Because if you think about the amount of time it takes for a river to carve out an entire canyon, that must take a very long time. And that's something that we could actually measure and determine. Okay, so with all this information, and is the Earth young or is the Earth old, there was lots of scientists focused on this question. how did we get to the point that we are now? Why are species different? And no one proposed a mechanism until Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck. Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck. Lamarck. You can just call him Lamarck. Okay. So he's the first one to propose a mechanism for how the changes occur over time in population. So we're talking about animals again. How changes occur in animals. Animals. Okay. And his idea had two main points. Point number one, use and disuse. So you can think about a giraffe, right? So he proposed that giraffes, look at my awesome giraffe picture, be impressed. Giraffe. It's got 4 legs. Okay. I know, right? You're so impressed by my beautiful giraffe. So giraffes started out small, but the trees that they wanted to eat from were quite big. So one day this giraffe started to stretch his neck a little higher, and he got a little bit closer, and then over time, over many, many generations, because he's stretching his neck, he's using his neck more than he's using other parts of his body, that his neck will grow. Gosh, I'm such an artist. Here's my beautiful giraffe. So here's my grown giraffe. So this is after several generations. Now, our giraffe, our awesome giraffe, can eat the tops of the trees. So that's because he's using his neck. Similarly, if he's not using a part of his body, such as you, in your body, you have a tailbone that you may or may not be aware that you have. This tailbone is towards your butt, of course, it's at the base of your spine. And because we have not used those, disused those have shrunk over time because we do not use those. You only keep the things that you use. So like the giraffe's long neck and his legs and that sort of thing. He's keeping the things that he uses. And that kind of makes sense, you know? And so, but he believed that we inherited these acquired characteristics. Inheritance of acquired characteristics. And this is the part where it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Characteristics. Okay. And it's because acquired characteristics. So in our giraffe example, this guy stretched his neck a little bit, then that influenced his children, which were born with slightly longer necks, and then they stretched their necks, they used their necks and stretched it and stretched it and stretched it, and we ended up with long-necked giraffe. However, for acquired characteristics, that would mean, for humans, for example, if you worked out a lot and you made your muscles very, very strong and beefy and bulky, that would mean that your children would come out muscular and beefy and bulky. And we did not see that. That is not something that we have observed. But the Russian government just absolutely loved Lamarck so much that they actually did a series of genetic experiments to show that it was acquired characteristics, because this is what they wanted. They wanted people to be able to work out and improve themselves, and by improving your own self, by improving the individual, then you can improve the next generation. However, with all of their research in the USSR, they actually found that to be false. Okay, so that's what we've covered today, just the history of evolutionary thought and where we're at leading up to Darwin, which is the next part in this series.